It's tea time in England and وقت شيء اللي صار في مصر. مرحبا في حلقة جديدة.
I'm Richard Talbot. I'm here at the University of Salford. I'm a lecturer in performance, senior lecturer in performance, and my interest has been in the Arab theatre network and particularly Egyptian practitioners, Egyptian theatre makers, Egyptian theatre critics. And I thought it would be really nice to start a series of conversations between theatre makers and critics in the Middle East, particularly in Egypt, and other practitioners in Europe and today from Australia, Ridiculousness. Fatima, could you say a little bit about how we met and your role as a language instructor and so on?
Yeah, of course. احنا اتقابلنا علشان كان في بودكاست بالمصري، وهي بودكاست متخصصة في تعليم العربي للأجانب، أو في بتعمل فيديوهات عن العامية المصرية، وصاحبتها اسمها أستاذة نسرين أمين. فهو شاف الحلقة بتاعتنا في البودكاست دي، وبعدين بدأنا دروس العربي بتاعتنا من آخر 2021، فممكن من سنتين تقريبا. I mean, I should say that in English one more time, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we met, like I and Richard met when he saw my episode on Podcast بالمصري. It's a podcast by Miss Nisreen Amin. She's a professor in England, and it's about Egyptian colloquial language and culture. I do online A, and then that was in late 2021.
But I'm glad you're here to help us because the conversation is more complicated.
No, I'm just here for sake of translation.
عندي الفكر عشان أنا متحمس جدا عن المسرح في الشرق الأوسط. عندي الفكرة ممكن عمل الدردشة بين النقاد والمسرحيين الممثلين من مصر
جميل.
والممثلين من أوروبا واليوم من أستراليا. هنا عندنا معنا Ridiculousness.
Well, I'm John Haynes. I'm a joint artistic director of Ridiculousness theatre company that's been going now for, well, no, we've been working together for 33 years, David and I. But the company was formed 32 years ago, August, I think.
David Woods. So yeah, we met in London, in England, and were coincidentally on the same acting course, having also coincidentally been on the same undergraduate degree course, English literature in Sheffield University, which coincidentally was where Richard was studying, although he was studying Japanese. But coincidentally, we also did a lot of drama group productions, all three of us. And coincidentally, we also lived within 500 meters of each other in the vastness of London. And these things, along with a sort of shared sense of humor and serious attitude towards the training, brought us together in an experimental way initially, and then more formally devising theatre productions for the fringe and independent theatre scene around the UK, and then to Ireland, and then internationally through Europe, North America, and then latterly sort of Far East and Australia, New Zealand. And over that time, our work has morphed, changed from being initially adaptations of existing texts that were novels that we were attracted to then writing our own work. And then that work has become more aligned with social justice issues as we've matured. And that's where we were able to reunite with Richard, making a work about schizophrenia.
يعني محيط 500 متر قريب من نقطة التمثيل الخاصة بيهم. بدأ الأستاذين اللي من أستراليا إن هم يعملوا مسرح مستقل. بدأوا المسرح بتاعهم أو المسرحيات بتاعتهم بس في إنجلترا، توسعوا بيها لأيرلندا، أوروبا، أستراليا، نيوزيلندا وأمريكا. في البداية كانوا بيمثلوا نصوص مكتوبة بالفعل أو روايات مكتوبة بالفعل، ولكن على مدى السنين دي قرروا إن هم هيمثلوا مشاهد هم اللي كاتبينها أو نصوص من تأليفهم ومن كتابتهم هم، ومعظم كتاباتهم بتركز على العدالة والحقوق بشكل عام.
جميل جدا، مشوار حافل يعني ومهم.
جدا.
And this first project that we were working on was about a social problem, psychosis and its treatment.
فهنا هنتكلم عن أول مشروع ليهم وإزاي بدأوا إن هم يشتغلوا مع بعض، والتركيز بتاعهم كان دايما بيكون على المشكلات المجتمعية أو المشكلات الاجتماعية، وهيكلمونا إزاي بدأوا العمل الجماعي بتاعهم وعمل الفريق عشان يترجموه على المسرح في شكل عمل ناجح.
اوكي، انا قابلت ريتشارد، بروفيسور ريتشارد تالبوت اول مره يمكن في مدينه الاسكندريه في مهرجان اسكندريه اللي بيرقصوا السينوغراف ابراهيم الفرن، وكان بيقدم ورشه في الاداء في التمثيل تحديدا. دي كانت اول مره نلتقي فيها انا وريتشارد، والحقيقه انه دار بينا حوار شيق جدا عن الفرق بين الاداء الممثل المصري واداء الممثل الغربي بشكل عام وازاي ان هو لاحظ يعني انه الممثل المصري عنده كتير من الانفعالات والحراره والسخونه اللي بتخليه يبدع يعني يكتر كتير او يعني يطلع كتير من المشاعر والاحاسيس اللي ممكن تعبر عن الشخصيات والمواقف الانفعاليه المختلفه يعني. المره الثانيه اعتقد كانت في مهرجان شرم الشيخ المسرح الشبابي في دورته الاخيره، وبرضه كان هو بيقدم ورشه، وكانت برضه ورشه مهمه جدا واستفاد بيها كتير من المسرحيين المصريين الشباب ومن اعمار مختلفه الحقيقه يعني. فانا بعتز جدا بصداقه ريتشارد لان هو شخص نقي ومسرحي حقيقي ورجل مسرح بالمعنى الحقيقي او المعنى الحرفي يعني للكلمه، لانه بيقدم او بيحاول طول الوقت يعمل الربط بين المسرح الغربي والمسرح المصري او المسرح العربي بشكل عام. دي حاجه يعني تحترم ومشرف الحقيقه لكل اكاديمي ومخرج ورجل مسرح من تراث فريد زي ريتشارد. فانا بعتز جدا بصداقه ريتشارد الحقيقه.
شكرا شكرا.
ده رائع جدا. shall I translate?
شكلي if that's all right. If just for John and David, yes, that would be great.
طبعا.
Yeah.
طبعا. So Mr. Basil and Mr. Richard first met in Alexandria, and that was like in theater festival where Mr. Richard was doing a workshop there, and they both have discussed how the emotional acting of the Egyptian actors goes, and how they have a lot of emotions that they express on theater, and how they deliver the character they are acting. And then the second time they met in Sharm el-Sheikh at the Youth Theater workshop. And Richard was very useful to the youth that were attending the workshop. And Mr. Basim says that Mr. Richard is a real theater man because he really cares about or is very interested in the connection between the Western theater and the Egyptian theater or the Arab theater in general. And this is a very interesting academic work.
شكرا وانت لطيف جدا. شكرا. Well,
شكرا.
so now we can. I mean, Basim, you're a critic You write about theatre in the newspapers and you review shows. And I'm
Yes.
really keen to introduce, I know David has been to Cairo and John and David have some experience of work in the Middle East, but I really want to introduce them to the Theatre Festival Network and try and persuade them to participate in that, and with works like the one that we're discussing today and future projects. So في مستقبل لو ممكن يشاركوا في مهرجانات في الشرق الأوسط، أنا سعيدني جدا يعني.
يسعدنا جدا طبعا المشاركة. أعتقد المهرجان المسرح التجريبي الآن فاتح أبوابه لاستقبال العروض من مختلف الدول. أعتقد قدامه 6 أيام عقبال ما يقفل الباب، يعني باب التقديم. فأتصور إنها فرصة كويسة إن هم يقدموا عشان يتعرضوا على لجنة المشاهدة والاختيار العروض.
فرصة سعيدة، صح إن شاء الله. But John, if you could sort of generally talk about your process, and then David move into something more specific.
Yeah. I'll try to keep it quite brief. But so David was talking earlier about how we began our career adapting novels, and realizing, I think, during performance that some of the most well-received parts of the production were actually our own what we had added to the novel, our own creations and inventions, which gave us the desire to start making our own work through a process called devising, which is a very common methodology. And in the early days, we would improvise, sometimes around a given theme, sometimes no idea of what we're going to do, and we would carry on for an hour or two, and then we would write down in a book the good bits that we remembered, and then we would try to re-perform them. And well, anyway, I mean, I could go into a lot more detail about this, but the process evolved to such a point where we were actually recording. We had various devices to record the improvisations, and so the periods of improvisation would be limited by the recording device, the mini DVD. What was it called? Mini DVD tape, 60 minutes or so on. And then we would listen to these recordings of our improvisation, or watch them if it was video, and we would transcribe everything in meticulous detail, and not necessarily re-perform all of it, but again, we would re-perform the bits that we liked and start an editing process, trying to identify bits that might go with other bits, so that the form would gradually emerge. That kind of is in a nutshell what we do. It's a lot of groups do a very similar process. I think perhaps the difference between us is that we would be so meticulous about the dialogues, particularly, transcribing every single and re-performing and learning them even, so they'd end up in the script, so that people would not believe that we had actually written down and learned all this stuff, taken the trouble to do that. So that's the process that we really still carry on with today, that we've been applying to the Gravedigger scene.
I'd just add to that that John said we moved away from adapting novels to just making up scenes from our own imagination, and sometimes we'd always in a way respond to the room that we were working in or the place we were working in, so those places would influence the material. So for example, a very popular work we made in 1996 was influenced by some art gallery plinths that art objects were placed upon. And then that became a show set in an art gallery, because the rehearsal room had these plinths stored in them, and then we adapted that. So place affects what we do. Sometimes research on a particular topic, and then originally, as John said, a story that it already exists.
فأستاذ باسم هم بيقولوا إن هم في البداية بدأوا بتبني بعض الروايات اللي بالفعل مكتوبة من أجل تمثيلها، ولكن في عملية التطوير بتاعتهم قرروا إن هم يشتغلوا على نصوص من تأليفهم هم، وعملية التأليف كانت بتتم عن طريق إن هم بيرتجلوا مشاهد للتمثيل، بيسجلوا الارتجال اللي هم بيمثلوه مع بعض، ارتجال وحي اللحظة، وبعدين بيتفرجوا على الارتجال اللي هم ارتجلوه ده وبيبدأوا يستخرجوا منه نص مع القيام ببعض التعديلات، علشان هم عايزين يقوموا بحاجة تكون طبيعية قدر الإمكان وفيها قدر من الارتجال واللحظة يعني. أستاذ ديفيد أضاف إن هم كان دايما بيكون في تأثير كبير من المكان اللي هم بيرتجلوا فيه، وهو عطى مثال بنص مثلوه أو مسرحية مثلوها سنة 1996، وقال إن كانت الأوضة اللي هم بيتدربوا فيها كانت عبارة عن معرض فني، وكان في تأثير كبير للمعروضات الفنية الموجودة في المكان ده على النص اللي هم ارتجلوه وتيمة أو نص المسرحية بشكل عام.
جميل جدا. وهل هاملت واحدة من العروض اللي هم قدموها أو بيسعوا لتقديمها دلوقتي؟
Do you think Hamlet is one of the shows that you are intending to act or to perform soon?